Revenge films.
This is a story of my sister and my fiancé being so stupid and getting too many people involved that they cause their own lives to self-destruct. My name is Kelly McDonald. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings, and I have a younger brother named Alex and a younger sister named Michelle. I was engaged to my boyfriend of 5 years, who I'd been dating since college. We had finished all the arrangements for the ceremony and the reception, and we were counting down the days on our 2 hands when the unthinkable happened. My younger sister Michelle, who was 5 years younger than me, said she was pregnant with Thomas's child. This all started when Thomas came to my house to meet my family for the engagement. At the time, Thomas was 25 and Michelle was 20. Ever since our college days, Thomas and I were often going to and from one another's parents' house, and Michelle treated Thomas like a brother. However, when he came to officially ask my parents' permission to marry me, he was cleaned up sharply in a suit, and seeing him make an official greeting my parents must have made Michelle think that her Prince Charming had arrived on his white horse. Just for her. She made up a different fairy tale in her mind, and with no regard for anyone around her, she went in for the attack. It's hard for me to admit this, but Michelle is pretty cute. Having such a young, cute girl like Michelle hitting on him, Thomas must have lost all self-control. And it didn't take long for the 2 of them to get together. Of course, there was no way that we could go on with the wedding like this, so just days before the ceremony, everything was canceled. When I tried to collect a settlement fee from her, "You should be grateful. You love Thomas, and I'm carrying his precious child in me." Michelle made this outrageous statement and was desperate to avoid paying the fee at all costs. I didn't pay any mind to that, though, and despite being called a penny pincher, I went ahead and collected a settlement from the both of them. To make matters worse, even my parents said, "Michelle is pregnant, you know, and wouldn't it be so sad if the baby didn't have the father around?" and asked me to hand over my fiancé to her. I was the one who was hurt and yet isolated from my own family. My younger brother had been watching all of this, seemed to take my side, saying,
"I can't stay in a family like this. I'm done."
and piggybacked onto me, leaving the family with me. It all happened so suddenly, but I went around and explained the situation, including the reason for calling off the wedding to all of the guests that I had invited on my side. "At least you found out before the wedding, and you dodged a bullet from marrying a man like that." Everyone tried to cheer me up, and they certainly had a point. However, in the following days, people said that they were still receiving invitations to the wedding that was meant to be canceled. I couldn't believe it, but everything that had been arranged for Thomas and I, they simply swapped out the bride and decided to move forward with the ceremony and the reception. I found out from one of my colleagues who had received an invitation, and when I confirmed this, it truly felt like my heart was struck by a bolt of lightning. Not only had my younger sister stolen my fiancé, she was also stealing the wedding of my dreams. Because all of the cancellation fees of the venue had become Thomas's responsibility, he must have thought that if he just changed the bride and continued on with the ceremony and the reception, he could avoid paying the cancellation fee altogether. If anything, they would be receiving congratulatory money, so he probably realized that it might be an opportunity to gain money instead. As expected, everyone in attendance was shocked, and it went in shambles. My junior colleague actually went to the reception, and from what she told me, first of all, Thomas's parents were confused. He must not have told them that the original engagement had been canceled. Then, upon finding out what was happening, the mother went straight to Thomas and Michelle right before the ceremony and slapped them right across their faces. This was explosion number 1 in the dressing room.
"Miss McDonald, what is going on here? Where is Kelly? Why is the bride Kelly's younger sister?"
Like we said, she's still a blood-related sister. It's just that the bride has been changed to her now, that's all. There really isn't such a big problem.
"Are you kidding me? This is a huge problem!"
Thomas's mother and my mother got into a raging argument. On top of that, everyone who had heard that the bride was going to be a different person wasn't in attendance, and the venue was empty with only a third of the guests showing up. In the midst of such an awkward scene, Thomas's guests and the few friends that my sister had invited were confused and muttering amongst themselves. Thomas's parents promptly called together their relatives and guests and explained the situation. Once they found out what had happened, one by one his relatives, including his parents, got up and left, telling the 2 to do as they wished, but good luck on their own. The guests continued to leave, and the venue became even more scarce, leaving the rest of the attendees even more confused as the ceremony started. And finally, the bride and groom arrived, but since they had been scolded and trashed by Thomas's parents, they didn't look too happy, resulting in even more commotion. My colleague showed me a photo, and the two of them looked like they had just seen a dead body. They must not have told the wedding planner or the venue either, because the entire ceremony, the MC continued to use my name. Almost as if to sink them even deeper.
The groom, Thomas, and the bride, Kelly, are friends from college and...
He even included stories specific to me. To this, the attendees were tipped over the edge. Hey, Michelle didn't go to college, did she? And isn't Kelly actually her sister's name?
Wait, could this mean that she stole her own sister's fiance and slept with him? And then she even stole the entire wedding ceremony too?
Now that you mention it, I don't see any family from the bride's side besides the parents. Is that why? They had caught on. In the meantime, Thomas's friends had also figured out the situation for themselves and were already ignoring the wedding ceremony as they started to eat and drink like it was a college party. And so the group of friends remaining ate what they could and without even waiting for the introduction of the bride and groom, got up in the middle of the reception.
This is so outrageous.
And left one by one. In the end, there was nobody left besides a sobbing Michelle and my flustered parents. And a Thomas who looked like he wanted to die. For the venue, it must have been hell for them to have to deal with this group from start to finish. As if by cause and effect, the story doesn't end here. With the start of his new life ahead of him, Thomas was shunned by his family, his relatives, and his friends. Michelle and my parents were also being ignored by the rest of our relatives and were isolated from the family. My father's side of the family were already living far away, so they of course kept their distance. But my mother's parents, who lived nearby and had always taken care of us, were livid after hearing what happened and cut off ties with them too. Thomas had also invited his colleagues and bosses from work to the wedding, and after seeing how stupid he truly was, he was ostracized at work and felt pressured to quit. For better or for worse, it's a really tight industry, and the rumors spread quickly. So all of the related companies had heard what had happened, and despite his efforts to find another job, it was rejection after rejection. In the end, he had to get a part-time job, and that was the start of their newlywed life. They couldn't even get together the money for the settlement fee, and of course didn't receive any congratulatory money from the wedding. And that, combined with the wedding venue fees, had brought their savings account to a whopping zero. They ended up going into debt to the point where they didn't even have enough money to give birth to the baby, and they had to go to my parents for help. I forgot to mention that since my parents' side of the family had all refused to attend, in order to fill seats, they had desperately invited random people like their elementary school friends. They became the laughingstock of the neighborhood and the family, and my father was no longer able to take it and left my mother before he even reached retirement age. My father had kept it a secret from the family that he had retired at an early age, and so all the retirement funds disappeared along with him. They had been planning on paying back the mortgage on their home with this retirement money, so that was all left on my mother's shoulders, who had been a full-time housewife with no income. It was around this time that Michelle and my brother came crawling to my brother and me, trying to play innocent. My mother's home and her car and Michelle's credit card loan and childcare costs as well as taxes. They were behind on all their payments, but my brother and I both turned our backs and refused to help. My full-time housewife mother and the unemployed Michelle had no one else to rely on besides Thomas. I heard he was finally able to get out of his part-time job and find full-time employment again, but his salary was half of what it was before, and they're all stuck in a financial disaster. In the midst of that situation, they became pregnant with their second child and are so caught up that they can barely keep their heads above water. Me, on the other hand, the president of my company introduced me to a kind and wonderful man, and I felt like I had scored the game-winning goal. My friends and relatives attended my proper wedding, and when they reported it to my sister and her family with some ridicule, it made them all go crazy at once.
How dare you not invite your parents? You're a disgrace to the family.
After being left by her eldest daughter and son, my mother had turned into a desperate witch. Thomas wasn't my Prince Charming after all. I really made a mistake. My sister had become a defeated damsel in distress.
I messed up! You're the one that I truly love, Kelly! Please, let's start over!
Thomas had turned into a pathetic Romeo. The three of them kept trying to drag me into the ridiculous fairy tale, and so I got a lawyer involved to take care of them. It was no surprise that these idiots who thought that they could just swap out the bride at a wedding didn't know what shame or embarrassment was, and therefore didn't have the brains or the heart to handle the consequences either. To this day, the people who saw it all unfold say, "That was a crazy time. I'm so glad that you were able to get out of it." But these days, I have an idyllic life with my kind and thoughtful husband and our 2-year-old daughter. If anything, when I think about the fact that I wouldn't have this life if it wasn't for their stupidity, I'm a tiny bit grateful to the two of them. And so I'll be happy just knowing that idiots like this exist. And in the end, they got what they deserved.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.